Okay, como mai. Welcome back from your break. Once again, I'm Frank Durego of Maui Economic Development Board, and it is my pleasure to moderate this panel on planning for long-term success. It says in the description online, as a business owner, you have an idea, you seeded it, watched it grow, and brought it to maturity. But what planning have you done to reap the best value from all your hard-won accomplishments once you decide to retire? So once you start a business, you actually have to think about exiting it as well. I'd like to introduce our panelists today who are going to help us untangle the ins and outs of succession planning and retirement. First, we have Tina Rasmussen of Skog Rasmussen LLC, a consulting company. I think Jeannie's out there too. Jeannie Skog, where are you? Where's your partner? Okay. And next to her, we have Peter Horowitz with the law firm Merchant, Horowitz, and Tilley. Let's give him a big hand. And last but not least, we have Robert Kawahara of Kawahara Plus Company CPAs. Is that how you say that?
It's actually plus who.
Plus who?
Plus who.
Oh, that's the one.
Mimi.
Okay, Mimi who. Right. Okay. Plus who CPAs. And I refer you to their extensive biographies online. So we did a huddle before we got here today, and we decided to give each of them a few minutes to lay out the topics from their own perspective. Then I'll give you a getting started question when we have a conversation. So we'll have presentations first, conversation next, and last but not least, we'll have questions at the end. So why don't we start with Tina, who has an interesting story to tell about her flower business that she and her husband owned for over 30 years, and she'll tell us a little bit about their succession planning and retirement plans.
Okay, thank you so much, Frank. It's great to be here. It was 1979, and my husband and I were newlyweds, had moved to Maui 2 years prior. As a young, gung-ho, hardworking couple, we started Paradise Flower Farms Incorporated. And there's a whole nother backstory of how we got to Maui and how we got in the flower business, but we don't have time for that today. So I'm starting here. We ran the company for 36 years. During this 36 years, we expanded from 2 acres to over 50 acres. From no employees to 33 employees at our peak, and 1 crop to over 23 different varieties of cut flowers and lay flowers. We added a lay-making division, a packaged plant, seed, and bulb division called Paradise Plumeria and Plants, and a wholesale retail florist business called Haleakala Florist. We had a very profitable website, which enabled us to ship fresh flower lay and blossoms throughout the United States and Canada. We raised our daughters on the farm, and they learned good work ethics from watching their parents and all of the employees who worked hard every day. I pulled some old photos out of the archive, so I hope you enjoy. This is what when raising your kids on the farm looks like. So over those 36 years, the company endured airline strikes, which crippled tourism on the island, 2 hurricanes, several droughts, multiple recessions, intense foreign and domestic competition, and 9/11, when we could ship nothing in or out of Maui for a week. But from these hardships, we learned to be resilient. We poured our heart and soul into the business, and it rewarded us with a beautiful rural lifestyle. We lived like most farm families, raising the kids on the farm, teaching them good work ethic, teaching them about business, and hoping that one day they might take over. We always knew, however, that our farm would be nearly impossible to sell. It was tied to 4 different parcels of property. So selling the business was never part of our retirement plan. But after we celebrated our 30th year, we started talking about transitioning to retirement. And we realized we did have some valuable assets that might be sold. Our daughters had both gone to the mainland and moved back and forth from Maui a couple times. I'm sure some of you know what that's about. At this moment, however, in time, they were both working in our company. So the first conversation that we needed to have was to find out if they were interested at all in taking over. We had attended a Bank of Hawaii family business succession program, and it was highly recommended that we hire a succession counselor to have these conversations with family members separately and then meet with all of us together. So we did hire a firm to facilitate that for us. From this conversation, we learned from our daughters that they were not interested in taking over the entire business, just parts of it. We learned that they also did not want to be in business with each other. Are you surprised? So after determining what each of them wanted, it was decided that one would take Paradise Plumeria and plants and one would take Haleakala florist. So now my husband and I were left with, okay, what do we have left to sell now? So we did an inventory of our assets. We had a very large lei-making operation complete with a really experienced staff. We had amassed valuable vendor agreements with most of the large chain stores, Foodland, Safeway, Walmart, Target, etc. We had paradiseflowers.com, a robust website with a shopping cart. We owned floral coolers that we had placed in stores throughout Maui that gave us exclusivity in those stores, like Pukalani Superette, Long's Drug, etc. We owned a very large database of customers, including all of our internet clientele, and of course we had equipment, trucks, warehouse space, refrigeration. So I started by preparing a complete dossier on our company. The history, what we sold, the branding, the competitive advantages we had, a complete description of our markets, staffing, etc. My husband and I then made a list of all of the potential companies around Hawaii that might be a good fit to purchase our business. And we really believed it needed to be a floral company that already existed. And then we personally visited all of those companies and told them that we were looking for a buyer. We found a first buyer, and we worked with them for over 6 months, and it failed. But what we learned from that experience was really valuable. So ultimately, we lowered the price, we changed the structure of what we were selling, we found a buyer that was a complementary floral business, and after 9 months of working with them, we came to terms and signed a deal selling the bulk of our business activity in November of 2015. So quickly, just lessons learned from that. It took us almost 3 years from when we earnestly decide to sell, so just remember it's going to take longer than you expect. Having the outside facilitator speak to our kids was the best thing we did because we got to the truth very quickly. I think that our daughters didn't want to hurt us, and they felt some pressure that they must take over the family business to keep the legacy intact. But had we not had that discussion from the outside with our true desires, it could have ended very badly. I would say lessons also: have your financials in perfect order, hopefully showing good profit margins. Be prepared to produce every detail of your business, several years of tax returns, and you must be totally transparent. Do a complete inventory of your assets, including intellectual property. Include a statement on opportunities that exist for your business that you did not necessarily take advantage of, but that the next owner might want to. And then calculate everything that you and your spouse and partner take out of the business: gas, car expenses, health benefits, phones, supplies, salaries, bonuses, travel, etc., because the dollars translate to compensation that the new owners can have. And then after saying that we would not carry the paper on this sale, that's exactly what we ended up doing. However, we did negotiate a large down payment, which gave the other party serious skin in the game. And then just remember that after the paperwork is all signed, you are not finished, because you need to tell your employees, you need to tell your customers, and that has to be really carefully and strategically planned, because news travels in 5 seconds. And you want this to be seamless, and you don't want your customers or your employees freaking out. And the last thing I'd like you to know about our experience is that be prepared for some personal, emotional upheaval once you have sold your business. You have lived and breathed it for a large part of your life. Your business is you, and you are your business. You feel the exhilaration and the relief of the sale, but at the same time, I was not prepared for the grief that I felt, that it was a loss. It was like a part of us died, and that really took me by surprise. I just found myself in tears over the next couple months when I thought about our staff, the history of all our customers, and all the happiness that we'd been able to deliver with every flower lay. And it took me a while to come to terms with that. So just don't forget that that may happen to you. It was really surprising. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Frank.
Your daughter's ears were burning. That was her on the phone, I noticed. So we're now going to go to Peter, who will discuss his experience of succession planning and retirement planning with a focus on the legal framework in which this process occurs, and I imagine it would include some of the challenges.
I'm not really sure what more there is to say. I think we could end it right to you. That's great. A little bit of my background. I got into the practice of law about 22 years ago now, during the downturn in the economy, one of them. And my first 4 or 5 years were sort of on the negative side of the economy, doing a lot of loan restructuring work, bankruptcy work, and all of that. A bit depressing, but it actually gave me a very good base for doing what I do now, which is putting stuff together, because I spent 4 or 5 years seeing what made things go wrong. And when you're taking apart deals and everyone's trying to salvage what they can, you tend to see, at least from the legal standpoint, what the pitfalls were, and then also from the practical standpoint, what the pitfalls are. My practice today, I do a lot of corporate and land use real estate work and business planning, both in the getting in and the getting out. And that's everything from a mom and pop shop on up to entitling a new resort property or something like that. So the small and the big. I like it because people are always optimistic going in. And generally, they're optimistic going out, too. So you're dealing with folks who kind of, are seeing a future, and it's fun to be a part of that. I'd say at the beginning, the important thing is, I look at it 2 ways. One, risk management. How do I insulate what your corporate life from your personal life and all of that. But then also, I tend to try to spend a lot of time with people trying to figure out, their goals. And that's the division in my personal view between the lawyer side of me and the counselor side of me. I like both of those words, and the lawyer's more the paperwork, and the counselor's more, okay, you're at point A, you want to get to point B, but what is point B, and what's your best path to that? That's oftentimes not something people think about, especially getting in. They see the business like a flower farm. Hey, I love flowers. I want to do this. I can make a living at this, but there should be an exit strategy. How long do I want to do this? What happens if I change? Is this something that I can sell or pass on? Do I have some value here? Frankly, there's a lot of businesses that there's not. If you look at a doctor or a lawyer or a flower farm, they have a book of work that can be passed on to the next person. There's a lot of businesses out there that don't have that. So. You might not be able to sell, put your business up for sale and sell it, but you might be able to pass it on to some kids or some folks who really are into the same thing. Our firm does some estate planning too, and that sort of ties into the succession planning. We get a lot of folks, especially on Maui, where a lot of the businesses are family businesses. They're small businesses. That maybe they're a couple generations are looking like they could be passed on to a couple generations. And we get a lot of folks who come in towards the end of their business life and say, okay, I got 2 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids, and I want to give it to them. It's been great to me, made a great life, for me, and allowed me to raise my family. I want to give the same thing to them. I won't say it's a red flag, but I always put my counselor hat on there and say, okay, let's take a step back here and see, is that appropriate and why it might be or why it might not be. In the estate planning world, if you want to create, equality, the only way to do that is to cash everything out and write people a check. Okay, and that's, that comes with its own risk. You might have a child who, can handle the money. They might have a child who you give them, $100,000 and it's going to ruin their life. And there's, ways to address that. In the business side, you have a situation like Tina described. It's not uncommon where you might have children who want the business, want part of the business, or want nothing to do with the business, or simply aren't able to, for one reason or another, to carry on the business. And you're not only dealing with the livelihood of those kids. If you pass on a business and it fails, okay, they can go do something else. But you might have 10, 20 employees, a family of people who depend on this, or you've grown and who depend on this business. So the businesses that I've worked with that have sort of done this successfully are folks who they might not start thinking about it on day one, but they start thinking about it fairly early on, or at the very least by sort of the midpoint of what they feel is their working career, and they start getting their kids involved. Or whoever they're going to pass it on to, whether it's their kids or their key employees or whatever, they're getting them involved in the business from the ground level, so that they really understand what it is to run a business, how it works, who does what. The relationships are sort of built so that when you do pass it on, when you turn over the keys to your kids or whomever, everyone's comfortable with it. And that, again, kind of goes to the types of businesses we find here on Maui. It's not really the large publicly traded corporations where, grandpa who owns 50% of it is checking out and he gives, 10% to each of, his 5 kids. And now they just own, but they don't, they're not really doing anything day to day. The businesses here, you really tend to do things day to day. So I tend to spend a lot of time with clients, helping them. Obviously it's their call to, when they're going to bring a child in or the next generation in and what job they're going to give them, but helping them kind of map the importance of that. And at certain times they then start bringing in that next generation into the meetings, into the decision making, so that they're comfortable turning it over. And what you're doing there is you're setting it up for a successful transition. I also find, again, with a lot of these businesses, in the succession planning, a very important thing seems to be not just the generation that's they're not just handing over the keys and walking away. There's oftentimes a need for them to stay involved on an economic sense. Health, keeping your health insurance going, keeping they might not have these small businesses. You don't have a big pension. You might have to continue to get some consulting agreement to stay involved, continue to draw some kind of salary or payment from that. And it's important to kind of define those relationships, so that it works from both sides. And I have a lot of discussions with a business owner who's used to drawing pick a number, $10,000 a month, and now they turn over the keys and they still want the $10,000 a month, but it's like, well, wait a minute, you're doing that when you were running the thing, day to day, and that might not work. So you have to, you're going to take to do it right. You take a good amount of time to really, really work through all of those issues. That's sort of an introductory of what I do and what I kind of focus in. Like I said, the more fun hat that I wear is the counselor hat. It's really easy to draft a stock purchase agreement. Don't say that when I send a bill for it, but it's relatively easy to do. But to do, and it's the same in anyways, to do it right, you have to spend the time on the personal. And in an island community like this, that's key for a number of reasons. So that's sort of an introductory to what I do and how I kind of approach it. So leave it at that.
Good. Thanks, Peter. So, Robert, birth, death, and taxes, the trifecta of the realities of life in the modern world. Could you take us through your perspective on taxes and succession planning and retirement?
Sure. I think I'd like to start with what you've heard from Tina and Peter were very accurate in what I've seen. And several years ago, Kelvin Takeda, with a former CEO for Hawaii Community Foundation, just came into my office and he asked me this question out of the blue. He says, "So how many businesses have you seen retire, succeed? What was the plan?" And I was sitting there and I was like, there wasn't many. And it dawned on me that this was a couple of years after 2008. And we all know what happened in 2008. We had a recession. Everybody who was planning to retire under a normal practice that we were having kind of had to put the brakes on everything. Everybody had to tighten their belts. The value in their companies went down. They started to work. They worked longer. They got through the recession. Things were kind of comfortable. They worked less. They got this money coming in on a regular basis. Now, all of a sudden, the succession plan came up. Now, succession plan in and of itself is not selling your business, right? Succession plan is a strategic plan. An outcome of that is selling your business. It's just one of many outcomes, whether you turn the business over to your children, whether you sell it. But what I had seen was there was a delay of almost 10 years from 2008 where people were not selling their businesses. Now, all of a sudden, since 2018, my practice for succession planning has picked up. But it has really picked up in what we're referring to as the sale or exit of your practice. And we can address those questions. But the actual planning of handing over the business, whether it's internal, you're developing the talent inside, or it's a family-run business, it's a long process. As Tina mentioned before, everybody's going to have a different experience. One of the hardest things that I've seen in family businesses is that no matter how hard you try, and to qualify here, my dad started this firm, and I took it over from him about, 8 years ago or so. And I really have to give him some credit in the sense that he really followed the principles of a successful succession plan. Now, it wasn't a hard and fast succession plan, but what he did was he was objective. He let me make my mistakes. He paid me like an employee. There are several key traits that you need when you turn over your business to a family business to a child. One of which is you need to be objective. The other is they got to have some natural talent to do the job that they're going to do. They also have to have the key experiences. What are those key experiences going to be? Is it going to be that they're going to run different levels? They're going to start from a teller. They're going to, grunt all the way up to management. They also have to have a development program, meaning part of that is you have to give them the training that is going to allow them to take it over. It's not just because you're the parent or the child. You're still subject to all of the same rules, right? You can't be favored. You can't have more vacation time. You're not going to be the person that can't be fired. You have to gain the experience, the trust of your employees that you're going to work with, or they're going to be your future employees. So, kind of this whole 2008, when circling back to Kelvin, was, it had dawned on me that now people are exiting. So now let's talk about the retirement side of this. The retirement side that I see is oftentimes there is a large disconnect between what somebody needs for retirement and what their business is in terms of the value. The two don't equal, okay? Planning for retirement and planning for a successful succession plan are two separate disciplines, okay? One does not feed the other. They're just part of the piece of the puzzle. You're going to have instances where somebody needs, what Peter said, somebody needs $10,000 a month. Financial planners working their financial plan. Business is going to generate a $100,000 sale. It's not going to cut it. And so they tend to either overvalue their business or undervalue their business. And so getting to the whole picture here of if you want to retire, you want to do a succession plan, you're really looking at a succession plan as part of a long-term strategic plan in your business, okay? Why do you want to do this? It's because you want to grow. What are the benefits of doing a strategic plan? One is it's going to help you to grow, right? Obviously, doing a successful part of your succession plan, having long-range decision-making is only going to help your business, okay? It also helps you to identify within your current company if anybody is lacking certain skills, because you're going to see, I can't really get rid of my business because the internal guys don't have the skills, okay? The other side of that coin is going to be, the last part, sorry, on my notes here, is the talent development. It gives your employees, and we were talking about millennials, and unfortunately they are somewhat stereotyped, okay? And I was one myself that stereotyped millennials because I hired a few and they just didn't work out. And you put this on them, but the reality is, most people don't realize is that millennial generation is much like the Depression generation. It's like 3 generations, or the generation before a baby boomer. What they have experienced is great uncertainty. Whether they weren't having opportunities or when they were growing up, they saw their parents lose their jobs, lose their homes. They went through these experiences. And so working with your millennials as part of this future generation coming up in succession planning, when you give them these opportunities and you show them these growth opportunities exist in your firm, and that is part of your strategic plan, but will work towards your succession plan, you will only get positive results out of your company. So kind of circling back on the life-death tax thing, where I kind of come in, where Peter comes in, we kind of come in at the end. We rarely come in at the beginning, right? So client comes in and says, I want to sell my business. We should have had this conversation 3 years ago in reality to help you prepare to sell your business. So I'll leave you with, if you are thinking about doing a sale exit of your business, think 5 years minimum, where you need to have a conversation with your professionals. Therefore, what Tina did was, and when you want to do a successful strategic plan or succession plan, you need to hire somebody who specializes in that. I can help you, Peter can help you, but somebody who specializes in succession planning will be worth its weight in gold.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, this is where I get not to work, okay? I reminded you guys about that. So we're gonna have a little conversation. The 3 of them are, I'm gonna sit here just like you and eavesdrop. I'm gonna get you started with a question. And please free to challenge each other, ask each other questions, and have a conversation about the subject of succession planning and retirement. So my question is it just as challenging to exit a business as it is to start up and build a business? If not, if it is, why? If it isn't, why not?
Okay. I would say maybe not as, because hopefully you have a lot more wisdom at the end of your career. But you know, when you start a business, you tend to make a lot of mistakes because you just haven't been through it, and you learn as you go. But definitely, it takes longer than you will think to sell a business, as I said, and Robert said. And there's all these unexpected things that happen along the way, and you need to be prepared for that.
I'd take the opposite view, and I say, from my perspective, it's tougher at the end. You know, when people are starting a business, I mean, a good chunk of businesses that get started fail. I mean, that's just reality. Different industries, it's different percentages, but it's a risky proposition to begin with. When you're exiting a business that's been around for quite a while, you have that push and pull between the old and the new. You have the folks who are exiting, either fully or partially, who have run something, built something, loved something. This is their baby. They're letting it go. You have the next generation who's coming in, who is taking it over, whether they're family or the workers employees who have become family, who might have their own ideas on what they want to do. And you're sitting in the room with this person saying, I'm handing you over this baby. And the people who are accepting it are saying, well, that's great, but I don't like, this, and I don't like that, and I'm going to do that different. And it's not yours anymore. So there's that tension, and that's why law has marriage counselors and all sorts of other stuff. So that navigating that is challenging. And that's, again, where the counselor side of it comes in. So from my perspective, it's a little tougher on the end.
I would have to take the middle ground. I forgot to qualify on the succession planning is that it will happen. What we're trying to give you information for is to be successful at it, right? That's the key here. You can sell your business. Are you going to get the maximum value for that business? That's what the professionals are trying to help you with, okay? Whether you do it correctly or not, you're going to have a result. Same thing for retirement. Succession plan is long range. What probably Peter and I work with as well is it's hard to get people to think long range. The two biggest ones are succession planning and retirement planning. Retirement planning is yes, when I can do it. But the reason why I take the middle ground is because each one has important steps. When you're starting your business, it's just as important to do everything right. And what I say is not spending the money making it right, but having give thoughtful process to starting a business properly, where you start to see where you're going to end. And when you end, it's a process, but you need to start that before you actually end. So both of them are different. They both can be challenging, and you can both do them good, or you could do them bad. You're still going to do it, right? You're going to start a business. You're going to learn as you go through your business. You could sell a business. You can close your business. You could have had different results if you planned properly for either event. And so that's why I'm saying it's not really harder. It's the planning that is involved in both aspects, the beginning and the end of that.
You got questions for each other?
I got
Go
a question
for
for Tina. You mentioned about the delicate nature of breaking it to your employees. Tell me because I work with clients on that, and we build that into our agreements. Tell me about your practical experience with that and the good and the bad.
That's such a good question, Peter, because that was one of the hardest days of my life, honestly. We had employees that had worked for us for 30 years. I mean, we had some really long-term employees. And there was not a dry eye in the company that day. I think my husband didn't cry because he's tough. He's a tough farmer, but he certainly was choking it back. We just tried to explain to them that we had found, and by the way, the other company that was purchasing us were telling their employees at the exact same time. We really planned this out, to the nth degree on how this would happen. And then immediately after that, we had email going out to our customers, as well as a full letter that was signed by both us as sellers and the new buyer that went out to all of our clients. So, it was emotional. It was emotional. We explained to them that, we'd had this wonderful long career, and we needed to make this transition, and we appreciated all of them incredibly so much for what they'd done in this company, and we all worked together as a team and what we had accomplished, and that they were delivering happiness virtually every single day with everything that went out of our business. And so it was emotional. That's the best way to describe it.
One of the things I find with that, and again, a lot of the transitions we do, like, buying and selling of a service industry business, like a restaurant, you'll always have a clause where no one says anything until there's a joint announcement. And it's not to keep it hush-hush, well, it is to keep it hush-hush, but it's not to be deceitful to anyone, but it's recognizing reality in certain industries, restaurants in particular. When people get wind that, someone's selling or this, your staff is gone. your waiters and waitresses who are young kids, whatever, they're just going to go they're going to go find another job because they don't know what's coming. So and that has a massive impact on value, because now instead of selling a going concern that you close down Sunday night and the next guy opens up Monday like nothing happened, you're selling a startup. And it's key to not only to be able to message it right to your employees so that they're comfortable with what's coming next. That this isn't simply, I'm getting a big check and I'm out of here, guys, but I'm providing for you. I'm handing this over. I'm trying to hand this over right so that if you want to stick around, you've got something, and it keeps that value for your buyer. So.
And if one thing I failed to mention is that the new company was taking all of our employees, 100% of our employees. And so we obviously let them know that. And 2 hours later, the new owners came to our premises and they had their meeting with our employees. And they really made them feel comfortable that their jobs would be intact. Obviously there was going to be a move of a place of work and so forth, but it just kind of was seamless like that. And they did. They kept all of our employees. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I deal a lot with the family businesses, and, I guess the question is really to Peter, and Tina wants to share, I'd be happy to hear that, is that I have seen two sides of family businesses where the person who is the founder, whether it's the matriarch, patriarch, who is controlling the family business, they have their kids in the business. I see both sides of it where they treat the children as employees, valuable employees, and they pay them well. And I see the other side where they treat them as child labor. And that's true in the sense that...
How well does the founder want to be treated in his retirement?
But here's the thing, right? You see this child labor effect because I'm taking care of you. We buy the car, we help you to buy your house, but they're not paying them. They're not teaching them to be ready to run a business and to treat others in their business. So I guess, Peter, when you see a lot of family businesses coming in, do you see the children being compensated adequately, or do you see them more, I listen to what mom and dad says I'm going to do? Well,
I think the ones that I see that work, the kids are compensated adequately and appropriately, I should say. Because you're trying to pass on values. That's the way I look at it, and part of that is valuing your employees. And if you're going to give your child an appropriate role within the company, whether it's stock clerk or middle management, whatever they're suited for. You want to compensate them appropriately, and I think that's it creates in them a sense of the value of the business. It also, if you've got multiple employees, if it's not just mom and pop and their kids, but you have other employees, it also signals to your other employees, look, this person's going to work. They're going to they're not any higher or lower than us. They're getting they're moving up based on skill, and how you want to be treated in your own retirement matters. There's a time. My kids do chores around the home. I don't pay them for it. But there are things that I'll give you a job. You want to earn some money? I'll give you a job, and I'll pay you accordingly for it. So, in the business sense, the ones that I seem to have the most honest and forthright conversations, and where people are really engaged, and you kind of get the sense that they've set this up about as well as they can to pass it on. Whoever they're passing it on to, if they've come up through the ranks, whether it's a kid or otherwise, has been compensated appropriately throughout.
I got a question. I'm going to jump into this. I was just thinking, we've been talking a lot about the value of the business itself, okay, and try to get the best value out of that, and planning for retirement based on that. And I'm thinking, shouldn't there be a parallel strategy? Like, shouldn't you be investing and maybe sort of a business 401k, if you want to put it that way, on the other side. So you're actually reaping income, just not from the business, but from investments and those kinds of things. I'm just throwing that out. So if anybody has experience with that.
Do you want to try it, Tina?
I mean, we never thought we were going to sell our business as our retirement. So we knew early on we had to save and put money in, retirement funds and so forth. So we just kind of went into it with that thought. And we were happy at the end that we realized that there was some value there, even though we were not selling our land. And so there was some value there. And so that was, that was helpful. But yeah, you've got to plan for all contingencies.
When it comes to the valuation of the company, I will say time and time again, I am shoot the messenger, right? I mean, you guys, as Frank had mentioned in the beginning, it's your blood, your sweat, your tears. You feel that there is this tremendous amount of goodwill. There's all this emotion involved. But when it comes to Peter and myself, it's like, here are the numbers, here's the facts, we're going to do a deal. And there's a value to your company, whether you like it or not, that you need to come to terms with sooner than later to be successful at changing it. Because the deals that you're going to ask for or the terms and conditions that you're going to ask for, in large part, are dictated by the value of your company. So, everything matters. And going back into your retirement side of it, if you're doing your normal business, you are saving for retirement, not because you're thinking of succession planning, but because it's the right thing to do to be financially sound.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I also add that, different types of businesses have different values. I mean, if you're going to sell a business, this one 5 times multiple, that's what it's worth. This one 3. There are businesses out there that the multiple is 0. So I mean, there's no buyers for it because either what you do is so unique or what you do can be recreated on in a snap of the fingers, or you don't have a book of work to sell. So, I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but you have to be honest and look at what kind of industry you're in. I said a doctor's office, you got a lot of value there because all those charts, which I guess are now on a computer drive, but that's a book of business that you sell to someone. And so another doctor comes in and they already have, all their appointments for the next year booked out. There are plenty of businesses that's simply not the case. So an honest look at what your business is worth on the market is important, and it's not always related to what you've been earning. So you might have been pulling out $100,000 or $200,000. It's not necessarily worth $1 million. I mean, I get a lot of folks who will come in and they're trying to start a business, and they're raising money and they're valuing, this is worth $1 million. I said, what? This is going to be great. Okay, yeah, it might be, but right now, it's nothing. So, and I'm not trying to dissuade them, but you have to be honest at what you got. That's all.
I'd like to jump in to make a great point that you're talking about is the question I also get from my clients is, you guys familiar with the term blue sky? Blue sky meaning there is this potential value if you did something that people want that value when they sell the business, but the new buyer has to do the work. So they're saying, well, if I bought another boat, my business would be worth more and I'd have more customers, so I should sell it for what it could be. Because I'm not taking the full potential of my business, but I should still get the value when I sell it. Yeah. I see that a lot in talking, I don't say talking down the seller, but it's that blue sky, that emotion that is involved in your company doesn't become a reality unless you actually do it. You got to monetize it in order to show it on a financial statement to get it to be valued, to come out to a multiple of what you're going to sell your company.
And where I come in on that, at least in the initial setup, is when someone comes in and it's going to be $1 million. Usually they're trying to raise money, and so they've got this great business idea, and the bank's not going to loan them money, so they want to get investors. And even if you're small enough, or you're dealing with accredited investors, you're still selling a security. And you can get a lot of trouble if you're misrepresenting what you've got. So, you can say we think it's going to be worth $1 million, but just don't say it is worth $1 million. So again, it's just really, an honest look at what you're getting into, where, what stage of the game you're in, and what if your goal going in is, in 10 years I want to be able to sell this, try to figure out what value you're going to create that you can pass on.
Okay, why don't we get into some questions here from all of you. You can see the SIFT LY. If you could go into your phones, or if anybody has a question we could pass a microphone to, that's fine. Okay, okay, go for it.
I don't need a microphone.
Okay, thank you. So everybody in the back can hear you as well. Go for it.
Not entirely, but a trust is more of an estate planning tool. So wills and trusts and whatnot. And a trust, if you die today and you have no estate plan, you might have to have your estate probated and go through court and figure out who things go to. A trust, and when you put assets into a trust, it basically outlives you. It's a separate existence. So you might have the typical one is a revocable trust, that you're the trustee of your own trust, and for all intents and purposes during your life, it's you, even from a creditor perspective. When you die, the trust is going to say, here's how I want, here's the successor trustees, and here's how I want these assets managed for the named beneficiary. So it's actually more a tool of a way to kind of hold on to control beyond your it can be nice, can be challenging. So there's an estate planning and a tax aspect to that. A little bit different from succession planning, because again, you're holding on to a fair bit more control than if you're finding a way to exit a business entirely.
So, really quick, sorry.
No, go for
So
it.
I think
Go
the
for it.
board of trustees that you're referring to tends to be a governance issue. What Peter said is there's the trust type of the ownership of the company, but we tend to see a board of trustees who govern the company after the parents when they are not involved in the business. So brothers, family members, now it's the second generation kind of took it over, third generation. These are the grandchildren who have not really gone into the family business, but they've all done well. They don't want to lose the family business, so they create a governance board. Okay, now that's different. Then that's a whole different aspect of training to be governance, where you're not actually have done the skills. And so I'll use an example of somewhat of a board of trustees. It's a little bit of a reverse. There was a construction company, local construction company, and this is before my time, and the guy was a general contractor. Just a normal general contractor, the type where you see it on the door, 1 truck, 2 truck kind of thing. He died early. Wife didn't know what to do. Kids were still young. What they did was they hired some professionals in, and they brought in a general manager. The general manager made this company a household name that you wouldn't realize started from just a general contractor, because it was the professionals that came in. But the family still owned the company. And that would be a term of a board of trustees without the trust legal aspect. It's a governance side of that board of trustees.
Awesome. Questions? Okay.
And they use the trust to pay their bills, and they pay their rents and stuff like that. From when they explained it to me, they told me that the bear trust and the corporation were the same thing. Does it not sound like anything that's...
I'm not familiar with the VAERS trust.
Bear trust.
Bear trust. I'm not.
Well,
Thanks,
they're
Robert.
Canadians, so I don't know if there's something different.
There are. I'm not familiar with the Bear Trust itself, but there are obviously a myriad of business models that you can create from both a legal standpoint and an estate planning standpoint, a tax standpoint. And usually when I form a company, I work with someone like this esteemed gentleman to my right, because again, I look at stuff from a risk management standpoint. When someone comes in and says, I want to be a blasting technician, I'm like, great, okay, you're going to blow things up. There's a lot of risk there. How do I protect you? And I have a number of tools in my toolbox to do that. But then from the tax standpoint, how is the money going to flow in, out? Is it going to be taxed at a corporate level? Where are the expenses coming in? That's, where the accountants come in. So there might be an aspect to that. And then, like I said, maintaining, control, through the generations, if it's important to, maintain control in a corporation in one group of people, but you're trying to raise money from another group of people, or have finance options, or being able to bonus employees with stock that doesn't give them a seat at the management table. There's a lot of different tools we can use to do that, both in the corporate setting and the trust setting as well. So it sounds like it might be something along those lines.
Something. Thank you, though.
I'm not familiar necessarily with the bear trust, but what I'm getting the sense of what you were trying to say, and I do this a lot with my clients, in that you hear this snippet in AARP or Kiplinger tax planning, and you ask the pointed question, but there's a larger question, and really what it is asset protection strategies. Okay, that's really what you're talking about here. And the three things that you need to realize that come with asset protection strategies: it's risk, the tax impact of that decision, and control. And usually you have to find the balance with the control. So rich people want to control their money and everything else, yet they don't want the risk. So attorneys create asset protection strategies that help to mitigate it, but you can't have your cake and eat it necessarily. So you're going to give up something to get something else. Whether you give up some control to gain more risk protection, or you want to retain control, you're going to have more risk. So when you talk about asset protection strategies, which is kind of the sense that I got off the question, was there are many ways to do it. There's many different strategies. You still have to look at what your situation is and how it fits for you.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, I watch Shark Tank a lot, and they always talk about valuation of a business. The sharks ask the prospective guys on the show, what's the valuation? What's a formula to set that valuation? Is there a formula?
You first or me?
The tax and the
it's always worth more to the person whose business it is.
Yeah. And I think what Peter was kind of saying throughout this panel discussion was, it depends on your industry, okay? You can have a 1x valuation of your gross. You can have a 5x valuation of your net. You could be a type of company that has recurring billing. So let's say you're a cell phone provider, right? You have a monthly subscription. That could be a multiple of 30, 40 times, depending on your industry. Alarm companies use that to value their selling. So when you're buying for your alarm company and they sell, there's a huge market for this that I didn't realize. They sell it based on the multiple, so it's like a 3-year per 3 years or 36 times the monthly contract price of each contract. Okay, so to answer your question, everybody who's going on to Shark Tank, they're coming up with a valuation, in part of what they think the potential is going to be. Okay, what it could be with the right amount of investment is not to dilute the existing shareholders inside of there as well.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to that, in that, I hear 5x multiple a lot. That's sort of what people come in the door on, but it really is an industry, thing. And what that basically means is if your profit at the end of the day is, $200,000, potentially your business is worth $1 million. But that also kind of goes into what Tina touched early on, about making sure your books are in order. Because I, see this all the time, and I'm sure you do as well, where people, they do some pretty severe, tax planning where they try to make it look like they've earned nothing, for the last decade, and nothing. And then they go to sell their business. I want $1 million. Well, okay, show me your books. Well, you've earned nothing. But look, I got the cars in the company name and the boats in the company name. Oh, so you got to be, you got to be a little careful what you're doing there. And the bottom line thing there is if you're asking for a 5x multiple and truly your profit is 5 times, what you're saying is assuming nothing changes, and not a dime, this person's not going to make anything for 5 years. And so, that can be fair in certain things. That can be unfair unfair in others. But, if you go out there, there are, tables that you can find that say, okay, the standard multiple for a restaurant business is X. The standard, multiple for a cell phone business is Y. They are out there, and a good business consultant will point you to them as well.
I have a comment to make
Okay.
on that, yeah. So the valuation was one of the biggest things we struggled with because, as I told you in my talk, our kids wanted these 2 divisions that we had that was rolled into the company books. And so when you're pulling 2 divisions out, yes, we knew how many sales those divisions made, but the overhead and everything is tied all together. And so we're trying to pull out those 2 divisions and then try to give the buyer confidence that what our books are saying, oh, but we have to take this out and we have to take that out, but yeah, trust us, it got really hard. And so when you have multiple income streams in your business, it's really important, and really you should be doing it now. It's really important to know, the profit that's created from each of those multiple income streams, because if you don't, and you have a situation like us and you want to peel something out, you can't give them books in confidence, that this is okay. So we really struggled with that. And, at the end of the day, we really just had to, lower the value. And we realized, we understood. I mean, we would have done the same thing if we were buying, this. We understood that. But that's how we had to solve it.
We have one more question out here. And this will be our last question because we're almost ready for lunch.
I have 2 boys, and they're 2nd and 5th graders. And the 5th grader has already told the 2nd grader that he's going to take over the business and his little brother can work for him. But I'm wondering if you guys can share, and maybe Tina, if you had anything set up with your girls, where I've heard other families on Maui kind of tell their children, like, you want to take over the business, great, but you have to go do this, this, and this before we let you do that, just to make sure that they've gone and tried and this is what they really want. Can you speak to anything that you've seen or fellow business owners have done with their children?
Yeah, having the kids grow up in the business. I mean, and by the way, Robert, my kids were child laborers, It's like, yeah, sorry. They didn't get paid well until they started demanding it, at some time in their late 20s. The business, it's such a hard thing with your kids. And we did, yes, you need to go to the mainland. You need to sow your wild oats. You need to get educated. You need to do all these things. And then we might consider if you're interested in, and you never know where it's going to end up because your kids can be so different. Each child is so different. And after telling us that she wanted Haleakala florist, and she was an extremely accomplished floral designer, and she had gone to the mainland and gotten all this education, plus a college degree in business management. When we sold the business, she said, gosh, Mom and Dad, I've met a guy in Seattle, and I'm going to move to Seattle. And I was like, what? And so at that point, it was too late. We just had to close Haleakala Florist. That was it. We just closed it. And so, yes, have them go away and get some experience. I think that's the best thing that they can do. But it's just so random what your kids are going to end up.
So, I'll say to this, I'm not sure what your business is, obviously, but I'll use my example of a CPA firm. I could have gone to college, got my training, and just worked for my dad, right? But I would have said it's better to go work for other firms to bring in that expertise back in. One of the things they talk about in Hawaii is a brain drain. Bringing in outside experiences back to Hawaii is very valuable. So again, I would say not knowing what your business is, if there is an opportunity where you need technical training or some type of training, you work and you apprentice at a different firm. You learn there, and then you bring those skills back, and you complement that with what? Because you kind of grow up. I mean, the scariest part is growing up with my dad. He was a single parent. He raised me like a client. And so everything I wanted, right? Everything I wanted, I had to justify, I had to prove. And so, I've kind of learned it back the
I know
other
his
way.
dad, that's true.
But, yeah, if you guys know my dad. But to answer your family business question, you're going to give your kids the value. You're going to give them some of the things that are made you successful in your business, but having them have the opportunity to bring outside experiences back into the firm of what they're going to do, that's probably a very good thing.
Okay, well, let's give the panel a big hand. Thanks, guys. It's now time for lunch. Just a reminder, feedback forms.